Sir David Amess, the MP for Southend West, has written the political Viewpoint article for the March 23rd edition of the Leigh Times. Sir David joins me now to outline some of what he had to say in his article. Hello, Sir David. I know you're keen to praise the vaccination programme. Could you start by telling me a little bit more about that, please?
Mark, I want to thank the Leigh Times for giving me the opportunity to speak directly to your readers. And the vaccination programme has been absolutely outstanding. Now, people may be critical of the way the coronavirus pandemic has been handled from its outset a year ago, and in the fullness of time there will be a full inquiry into it to find out what things were handled well, what things were handled badly. But the vaccination programme is the best in the world. And in that regard, I want to thank each and every individual who's contributed to the success of the programme. Everyone involved in the health service generally, who've been supported by an army of volunteers. And I've been very fortunate to visit a number of the centres, most recently the one on the airport estate at Saxon Hall and the one at Highlands Boulevard. I've spoken, obviously socially distanced, to a number of people receiving the vaccinations, and whether it was the Oxford one or the AstraZeneca one, they've all been full of praise. So yes, I want to thank everyone. It's amazing. Over 26 million people already vaccinated. And in our area, we've got through the top group so quickly. I think we're now practically reaching the vaccination of youngsters. So I'm really pleased about that, Mark.
You've also spoken about kids going back to school, and that's another thing you're celebrating.
Yes, well, as a father of 5 children, I know if my children were small, I'd be celebrating them going back to school, because trying to look after children, or your best to look after them, is one thing, but trying to educate them when you may not have the expertise, although I was once a teacher, has been a challenge for so many parents who've had their own jobs to pursue. And I want to say a very big thank you to all our teachers and all the support staff for the wonderful work which I have to say they've continued doing, because I think some people think that all the schools have been closed. That is not the case. They've always been open to the key workers. And of course, since the first week of March, they're all going back to school. And although there have been some tricky challenges, and I know there was a bit of an upset over the examinations and people losing out on teaching time, and worried about the end of the term and which schools they'd be going to, I think the schools have done a fantastic job in really handling it very smoothly. And I've been in touch with all the schools throughout the pandemic, and I absolutely take my hat off to them. A very, very good job continues to be done. So on behalf of all the parents in the Southend, you can't please everyone, but a very big thank you.
You've referred to the budget and getting the economy back on track. What are your thoughts there?
Well, look, for a while, the Chancellor of the Exchequer was applauded by everyone because of the different schemes he launched, really, whether it be furlough or the Eat Out scheme, all the rest of it. And I thought, well, that's all well and good. But of course, being a Chancellor isn't normally about just giving out money. It's about balancing the books and stopping inflation and stopping unemployment. Well, the budget really gave us the first taste of the huge challenge which lies ahead of us. It's on the background of course, us leaving the European Union. Well, no one thought we'd be leaving the European Union in the middle of the pandemic, but that is in fact what has happened. So whether or not we were still a member, it's been a big, big challenge for everyone. And I've been in regular touch with local businesses. It's not clear yet that the local authority has been administering grants to local businesses completely as the government would have wished. Now, you get some people praising the local authority and other people saying that they think the criteria for them qualifying for loans and such like has not been fair. So I mean that the overall picture is a little unclear at the moment, but I do think that the budget has laid out a plan for how we're not going to kill what growth there is, but trying to sustain, encourage and help local businesses and also nationally to grow, and how we're going to pay for everything. I mean, I've never met people who really are delighted to pay taxes, although they say they are, but the money's got to come from somewhere. And I think the budget was a reasonable start on the road to recovery. And I have to say to you, Mark, compared to many other countries all over the world, we are in a far, far better place than they are.
You did mention Brexit, and that tied in also to what you were saying about the rights of local fishermen trying to achieve a fair result with their quotas. Could you tell me about that, please?
Yeah, well, Mark, you and I know that the country was divided over our membership of the European Union, but we believe in democracy. We had a vote, and although some people would argue about the vote, it has been settled, and we've left the European Union, and we've got to make the most of our opportunities. So I hope that argument now will dwindle. However, when the agreements were made on what terms we would leave the European Union, I had hoped, and I realise that nationally the fishing sector is small, but I had hoped that the fishermen would be in a better place than they appear to be. And I'm in close contact with all the fishermen, and I'm working with others in Essex and Suffolk, all along the estuary, in fact, to Norfolk. And we are trying to see what we can do to ensure that the agreements which we thought we had are honoured. Because it does seem at the moment, without wishing to start an argument, that there are some European fishermen who are not adhering to the agreements which are made. And we're not going to put up with it. And the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State have been left in no doubt at all that members of Parliament such as myself, who have fishing interests in their constituency, intend to be the voice of fishermen. And what we want is fair play now. We're not prepared to wait for 7 years when the agreement settled down, because these fishermen can't live on thin air. And one particular issue, Mark, of course, is about shellfish. And we've got to make sure that we are not disadvantaged when we want to sell our produce to Europe as compared to how the Europeans want to sell their produce to us. So I can see that is a battle which is still in progress and not yet resolved.
You're on the case, though.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You also mention in your article about the recent events in Old Leigh and Chalkwell Park, including residents witnessing daylight drug deals and the fact that the police have been given an extra £686,000 to tackle serious and violent crime. Could you tell me your thoughts about that, please?
Well, thank you for raising this issue, which is very much in the news at the moment, Mark, because I was horrified about the violent encounter which we now know took place in Old Leigh. And I was very distressed about what went on in Chalkwell Park. Both areas, we're not used to having such violent outbreaks, although local residents had brought to my attention probably 2 years ago that they felt that there were drug deals going on in both areas. They felt that they had seen individuals with knives, and they had alerted me to the fact that there were groups of people gathering, which frankly were up to no good. And it was roughly a year ago I engaged with our local police officers, and we went together to Old Leigh and had spontaneous meetings with local residents. So they were well aware of concerns on these issues. Well, of course, police can't be everywhere when something happens, and they rely on intelligence. But I've left them in no doubt at all that we had flagged these issues up before, and we do badly need them addressed. So this extra money will give them the further resources which they have on occasion said they need, whether it be with cameras or extra physical presence to face these challenges. I mean, at the moment, the Chief Constable of Essex and the Police and Crime Commissioner, neither of them have contacted me to say, David, we need your help. We need more resources. So I am assuming this huge amount of extra money will hopefully address all the things that they need to put in place to make sure that these violent encounters do not recur. But I have to say, Mark, none of these things should be happening. I don't understand a society in which we live whereby a knife, which, unless you're a scout, whatever, and you're using knife camps, you know, we use knives to eat. The idea that you would take a knife, a domestic knife, and then use that to attack another human being with is completely foreign. The idea that you would do a drug deal in broad daylight with no shame, with all the effect of that, these are deeper, troubling developments in society. And there's not going to be a quick fix to it, but we want to make sure that we're all aware these things are going on and work together to stop it out, stamp it out. And this obviously starts within the home environment. We can't just leave it to our schools to deal with it. We've all got to take some sort of responsibility here. But I do think the extra funding will help with the different schemes that I know the responsible authorities want to put in place to not only halt violent crime, but to turn things around completely.
The Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill is obviously quite controversial at the moment. It's something you've said in your article that you're fully behind. Can you explain that for me, please?
I'm absolutely, completely behind it, and I'm taken aback regarding quite how virulent the whole thing has become, because I stood as the Conservative Party candidate in the general election, which took place in October 2019. And if you look at my manifesto, this was not only leaving the European Union, but this was the heart of the manifesto on which I was elected on. And one of the things that I was picking up all the time was that people wanted fairness, and they wanted punishment to fit the crime, and they wanted better detection, and together with all the things which have surrounded the awful murder of this young woman. Awful murder. Every murder is terrible, but to think that the person accused of the murder was a police officer working in the House of Commons. I mean, this is pretty grim. And I spoke in the second reading of the debate. We're only given a short time. I just touched upon two subjects, one of which was the issue of travellers. Now, we all applaud the life of travellers, and the people who travel to support fairs, etc. And you've only got to go over to St. Lawrence Church, and of course the graveyard is full of gypsies there. But this is light years away from people turning up, just going into Prittlewell Park, Priory Park, or into Eastwood Park, and just setting up a camp there, leaving all their rubbish, terrorizing the local residents. Well, that's not acceptable. And it's been an absolute nightmare to get these people to move on, not paying for the damage they leave in their wake. And I'm really, really glad that that is part of the bill. And just the other point I mentioned, my office in Westminster overlooks Westminster Square. Now, this is a very, very busy roundabout. It was never designed for daily protests. And every day there are gatherings of, well, often a huge number of people complaining about something or other. Well, we're not suggesting that after a general election, we settle who's running the country for the next 5 years and you can't protest. Of course you can protest, but not on a middle of a roundabout, not to gum up the traffic completely in London, not 5 days a week, and not allowing people to get into Parliament itself. And my team in my office will tell you, Mark, that it's becoming possible to work there. You have the windows closed, there's drums banging, there's all sorts of chanting, there's bagpipes playing. It's absolutely ludicrous. And we have witnessed some terrible scenes of violence in Westminster Square, which frankly shouldn't be taking place. And this isn't costing thousands to police, it's costing millions of pounds. So they're just two parts out of the bill. And if people are concerned about the bill, but I just wonder how much they fully understand its intents. The second reading of the bill is about the principle, which I support, and that's followed by the committee stage and the report stage. And that's when we get into the minutiae. Is this right? Oh, we need to change it. And that undoubtedly, the bill, I have no doubt at all, it will be amended.
So just to be clear, the right to protest you think will be protected, but done in a way that respects people. How do you see it ending up?
Of course people can protest, but you know, you just can't turn up and glue yourself to an underground vehicle or walk onto a bridge and lie flat in the road and stop traffic. I mean, where does this end? We won't be able to get on with anything. I think if you work with the authorities and say, we're going to protest, they will allow you to. Look, I don't know precisely what went on with this vigil concerning the woman who was murdered. It looks as if it was very badly handled. That's as it looks. And we are having an investigation into that. Oh, for goodness sake, people can protest and demonstrate against things all the time. Look at my office in Ivor Hall. I don't work there. I work in Westminster. They're always turning up there to demonstrate, but no one's stopping them as long as they don't damage the building and go on to private property. You know, if they want to stand outside the building, it's up to them. I'm not actually there. And if they sort of see that as an image, oh, we don't like David Amess and we don't like the government, well, so be it. But I think we're coming to the ridiculous point, Mark. What is the point of voting? There's always going to be those people in favour of whoever was elected and those who were against. And I do, but once you're elected, you represent everyone. Mm-hmm. But there's no question at all, this bill is not going to stop the right of peaceful protest.
Going on, you also speak about the breaking up of the United Kingdom and the idea of different governments, and you're looking for a way of bringing them all together, if I'm understanding correctly.
Well, look, Mark, I've been in Parliament for a long time, and the majority of MPs haven't. So I've been observing very closely what's happened to the United Kingdom. And having been there when these devolved governments were set up, I mean, they had a referendum in Wales. They were not as keen, anywhere near as keen on independence as Scotland was at the time. I think this pandemic has demonstrated how poorly devolved government is working, really. You can't have 4 prime ministers. You can't have 4 governments. You have 1 prime minister and 1 government, and you give devolved powers accordingly. But I think it's proved it's not working terribly well. And I mean, how ridiculous in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic to say, well, look, we didn't like the result in 2016 of the referendum, or whatever it was, so we're going to have another one. No, no, no. We had the referendum. It was a once in a generation time. You're not going to have another referendum. But look, there's many things going on in Scotland at the moment. The Scottish Nationalist Party do not seem very happy with each other. And I, as a member of Parliament, know exactly what's going on in that party at the moment. So I think they may not get the enthusiasm that they originally thought to break up the United Kingdom, and how stupid the whole thing is, really, because at this particular moment in time, we're much, much stronger together. This is a tiny little country with a huge number of people living in our country. And to break it up, I think, is absolutely nonsensical. And I think more and more Scottish people are far less enthusiastic about independence than they might have been a few months ago, because in terms of health, education, a whole range of things, they can see that England really is doing far better than Scotland is.
You move on then to the opening of the Houses of Parliament in May and a major bill that will affect the environment, which you're very keen on. What's that one about?
Well, I share the enthusiasm, not just of young people, but with everyone about our environment. And it was the wonderful Mr. Attenborough who brought home onto our TV screens the damage that has been done to all of our environment. You know, going back, Mark, I think we remember Keep Britain Tidy campaign, and it was all about litter. Well, look, it's all moved on from that, hasn't it now? It's all about plastics. It's all about contamination of the air. It's all about cyber attacks. It's all about wind farms. There's a lot of things in the mix. But when the world, if we reach that point, comes together and they look at how this pandemic started in the first place, I think there may well be issues concerning the environment. And this bill, as I understand it, is going to address a whole range of issues in terms of saving our precious planet. Because didn't we all feel when the first lockdown took place, the silence? And then all of a sudden, all the birds which had gone returned to our gardens. All the animals, the wildlife returns to our gardens. And there were no longer any planes in the sky. There were no longer any cars driving about. Now, obviously, we can't like that anymore. But I think it did really give us the opportunity to think about the simple things in life. And I think the environment will build upon that. And it will particularly deal with the animal kingdom. I'm an unashamed animal lover.
I know you are. I know you
and
are.
I do think that having left the European Union, our animal welfare will continue to improve. And I see us being a beacon for the rest of the world, so we can encourage some of our European friends to adopt similar practices as we do in this country. So I'm very optimistic. I've recently had a 10-minute rule bill on the cruel treatment of pigs in farrowing crates, and at the moment many people are interested in pet theft. So all these matters are hopefully going to be wrapped up in the Environment Bill. And I'm frankly looking forward to it. So it's going to deal with what perhaps people might think are the small issues, but the big issues, particularly with the way our precious environment has been abused over the years and how we intend to address it.
Finally, you mentioned the local elections which are coming up. Is there anything you'd like to say on that?
Oh, there's a lot I'd like to say, Mark.
Right, anything you can say then? Perhaps I'll put it like that.
Look, it's been a very, very strange 2 years, hasn't it? Because the local elections were cancelled last year, and I am a Conservative. I very much want every Conservative candidate to be elected onto the council, and I want it to become a Conservative-controlled council again. But, you know, I would say that at the moment it's Labour-led, working with the Liberals and the Independents. I mean, I'm never quite sure if there's one independent group, two independent groups, or three independent groups, but and not all of them support the council. As I understand it, most I'm not physically in Westminster. You're not physically, perhaps at the moment, in the Leigh Times offices, and I think they've mainly been operating remotely. So it's quite difficult to judge really what's been happening locally, and all the money that the local authority has been doling out. It's not been money that they've raised locally. It's been given out from central government. And as I said earlier, Mark, there have been issues regarding businesses not qualifying, local taxi services not qualifying, all those sort of things there. And politicians tend to claim credit for what they perceive to be all the good things and blame other political parties, the opposition, for all the bad things that are happening. So these local elections are going to be quite unusual, really. I don't know whether they're going to be a verdict on how this local authority has been performing and how you can accurately judge what they've been doing, or whether it will be a verdict on national issues. You know, we've got the Police and Crime Commissioner elections at the same time. And I think when the political parties launch their manifestos, we'll see exactly what it is they are proposing. I have a very firm vision, as you know only too well, Mark. I want Southend to become a city. It wouldn't cost a penny. Well, you might have to rebrand a few name signs, and you might want to spend a bit on PR, but in reality, it's not going to cost much money. And but what it will do, it would mean that if we become a city, it would be much easier to attract investment than would otherwise be the case. And I don't want the media to dwell on bad things that are happening in Southend, like a couple of the things which you and I've discussed. I want to talk the place up. I want it to be positive. I'm very proud of any number of things which are happening in Southend, and the beauty of the Thames estuary and all of that. And I want to see our high street change so that we don't have empty shops, that we have all good quality shops together, like we have the high street in Leigh-on-Sea. I want us to become a centre of learning. I want to celebrate the wonderful artists that we have in the town. So I hope that some of these things will be discussed during the local election campaigns. But the difficulty is, Mark, I mean, at the moment you can't knock on doors.
Yeah.
You're not able to. You're just sort of literally delivering a leaflet. Well, we don't know whether people are going to read the leaflets or whether they're going to be tearing them up. You know, it's going to be a funny election. But We'll wait and see, Mark, what the outcome is. But for me, I want a Conservative controlled council, and I want all the Conservative candidates to win. We will see what happens.
I'm not surprised to hear you say that, Sir David. The last thing you mentioned is your regular surgeries. What I'll do is put your email and phone number at the bottom of the screen here so people can see that, and obviously that's for your constituents so they can get in touch if they want to talk to you.
Oh yeah, whatever they want to contact me on. I mean, at the moment, Mark, so we've been recording this exchange between us, and it was following a surgery. I had been having surgeries when I was able to physically distance in church halls throughout the constituency. That I will continue to do, but obviously with this lockdown we couldn't do that again, so we're just in one place. But I'm looking forward to resuming that. And as far as I'm concerned, when we reach that exciting date in March, when we can get back to normality, I can't wait to get out and about meeting people again. But we can't wait until then. Anyone who wants help with a particular issue, I mean, surgeries tend not to have political arguments because everyone's got their own political views. Surgeries are more about, oh, I need help with my housing situation or my benefits, or I've got a health issue. That's what surgery's for, and I'm always available to help people with their many and various problems, and it's always done on a strictly private and confidential basis.
That's brilliant. Now, I've actually got one other thing I'd like to ask you about that isn't included in your article, but which came in this morning. I understand you're launching a campaign to set up a memorial for Dame Vera Lynn. Are we allowed to say or hear anything about that?
Well, look, I'm very fond of Vera Lynn. She came from East Ham, I come from West Ham, so both from the East End of London. And I think she was an absolutely outstanding singer, but for years she worked cheering up our forces during their darkest hours, particularly in the Far East. But she didn't stop after the 6 years of the war. She continued doing it. And, you know, we could dwell on the effects of the White Cliffs of Dover, or We'll Meet Again, or all those wonderful iconic songs that she did. And when she died at the age of 103, because I had very good friends in Ditchlin who lived next door to Vera. So I did know her family, that's a connection. And I very much want not just a statue to Her Majesty the Queen next year when she celebrates her platinum anniversary. I mean, she's probably sick to death of seeing statues of herself, but there aren't any statues of Vera Lynn, and I don't think it would be controversial. So I'm working with the family. I'm the chairman of the Dame Vera Lynn Memorial Fund, and on the 26th of March we are launching the campaign to raise the money. The money, no public funds, all through individual subscriptions. And at the launch, you will see Vera's only daughter, Ginny, who will read out a letter from Sir Paul McCartney. You will see a video of Sir Tim Rice. You will see a video of Catherine Jenkins. You will see a video of Viscount Slim. And you'll see a video of a very famous actor, Alan from Brideshead Revisited. I think that's about it, but we're trying to condense it into a relatively short video to launch the campaign. And if anyone wants to give to this memorial, I think it's going to be wonderful. Dover Council are so excited. They see it as a real opportunity to have it on the White Cliffs of Dover. And I think they've even got plans to have a permanent exhibition of Vera's different bits and, well, I say bits and pieces of her artifacts collected over the years, which people can go and enjoy. So, yes, thank you, Mark, for giving me an opportunity to advertise that launch, which is on the 26th of March.
Thank you. Right, I'll say goodbye now, and I thank you very much for your time today. And I look forward to speaking again sometime in the near future, if that's all right.
Can't wait for it. Keep well. Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
very much. Take care, David.